There is one thing that can completely change the outcome of your custody case. And it has nothing to do with hiring the best attorney in town. And it's not filing all of these motions or who files more motions. And it's not about having the most perfect parenting plan that you've ever seen. It is how you communicate. And if you do not improve your communication, every single message that you send to your high conflict co-parent is building a case against you. Years ago, when I was in the middle of my own high conflict custody battle, I decided to implement the BIFF method. And I started using BIFF communication with my high conflict co-parent for 30 days. So brief, informative, friendly, firm, every single message. There were no exceptions. And today, I'm going to show you exactly what happened, what changed, what was hard, and what surprised me the most, and what you can start doing today to get the same results. I'm Bridget, a high conflict custody and divorce coach and a legal strategist with over 20 years in the legal field. I have been where you are, and I'm happy to say that I'm no longer there. I have survived coercive control. I represented myself in family court, and I successfully won sole custody of my children. If you are new here and you have not subscribed yet, I want you to hit that subscribe button and the bell right now, because my channel is all about real communication strategies, teaching you how to document, and court preparation so that you can protect your kids and stop surviving and start winning and kicking ass doing so. All right, let's dive in. So, communication with my co-parent before I started BIFF was pretty chaotic. I mean, it was terrible. I remember sending long paragraphs, responding to line by line of everything that he was telling me. In fact, I would copy and paste his original message in an email, put it in the body of my new email, and I would respond in a different color to everything that he was saying, because I felt that it was important that I deny every false thing he was saying, that I justify myself, I defend myself, I defended the actions that I was taking, the whys and why nots. And it was physically and emotionally draining for me. I remember after writing some of those messages, I felt like I needed a nap. I was done for the day. I was overstimulated, overwhelmed, and it made it hard for me to keep showing up in all areas of my life, including my job, parenting my children in a way that I wanted to, and started to implement gentle parenting. And, every text that I was getting from my ex and email, it was a severe trigger to me. My ex and his family knew all of the buttons to push with me. They knew how to manipulate me because they'd been doing it for 10 years, right? And so that didn't stop just because I left the relationship. In fact, it got worse. And I didn't realize what was happening initially till there were some real issues. I had to recognize my own patterns of behavior and my own communication style, not just my ex's, right? I spent a lot of time over explaining things. I felt this incessant need to prove that I was a good enough mom, that I was a good enough parent. And I wanted recognition from him that I was a good mom. And I never really got it, right? But I kept trying. My efforts didn't stop. And I remember just thinking every time I was responding to these messages, if only I could get him to understand, if only I could get him to agree with me. How can I get him to agree with me? Between 5, 6, 10 different messages of going back and forth, was I able to get him to agree? No. Was I able to get him to change his own perspective? No. And I did not accomplish getting him to change who he was. The thing that made me decide to learn about the BIFF method I was absolutely exhausted. I had discovered TikTok. This was during COVID and quarantine back in 2020. And I started learning about like narcissism and narcissistic abuse and post separation abuse. And it was when I started to learn about these things that a light bulb went off in my brain. I'm like, oh shit, this is what I'm going through. This is what I've been experiencing all of this time. And I didn't even know, right? I started to learn that knowledge was power. And the more that I could learn and soak up, the better things were going to be for me. I think I reached a breaking point and I was just like exhausted of having to send all these messages back and forth. And I was in a short-term relationship during this breaking point, and the partner that I had at the time was trying to give me advice on how to respond to things and like, "Oh, do it this way and oh, do it that way." And I had a friend trying to do the same thing, and they really thought that they were helping me. And I think, looking back, I believe that they truly believed that they were helping me. And not to call them out or say that they were doing anything wrong because I did feel the need was there, right? And there was a desire to help me and support me in this really difficult aspect of communicating with this person who was impossible to communicate with. And I kept seeing all of these court order violations rack up. And I thought to myself, how can I ever get my life to change? I don't want to live like this for the rest of my life. I had a permanent custody order in place. I'd filed for divorce. I had filed for my own custody case. We went through the mediation process. I had an agreement and we implemented it, right? And it was a permanent custody order. But the thing is I realized that nothing is ever permanent, right? Like, I don't think people understand at first that word permanent makes us all think that it will never change and that we are bound by the terms of this order of the court for the rest of our children's lives until they're 18 and then we have freedom. That's not true. So I researched a bit and I'm like, he's violating this custody order left, right, every single day. I started to empower myself so much that I recognized, hell, I can file for a modification and contempt because I'm not deserving of this, nor my children for the rest of their lives. And I had a co parenting coach that I had encountered through social media, became a great friend of mine. And she also empowered me to file for contempt and a modification. And I learned how to track everything that was going on and I went backwards, right? I had lots of notes, I had lots of emails, and I started keeping track of everything that had happened. And I had met with an attorney at one point. I think my dad maybe had paid for a consultation with an attorney, and the attorney's like, "Well, what's really been going on? Do you have a journal? Start writing everything down." And my therapist at one point, when I was still married to this person, had told me to start writing everything down. And if I hadn't started doing that, I don't know if I would have ever left that marriage because it truly saved my life. And it helped me with the cognitive dissonance that was going on in my brain, right? Like my reality was being distorted, my perception was being distorted because of all the gaslighting and manipulation that was occurring with my ex partner that he was doing to me. So I was really scared. I was scared when I started looking into BIFF that if I was being brief, that it could look maybe too cold to the judge. But this time I had found One Mom's Battle and Tina Swithin in canned responses, and I was using a lot of those canned responses. I later learned that actually, while it saved me from a lot of back and forth communication, it ended up at points making me look passive aggressive. And what did my ex do? He started mirroring my behavior and he started using the same canned fucking responses back at me. Right. So I was scared that all of a sudden me being more brief was going to make this judge think that I was cold hearted, that I didn't care about my kids. I was not a good enough parent. And I also became very fearful that silence would be used against me. I was scared that by me not speaking up, I was losing my voice. I was now allowing this person to walk all over me yet again. But that's not really true. Before I started this challenge, my messages, my email inbox looked pretty chaotic. There were long, ranty messages. explanations that, no one was really asking for. I did a lot of defending myself because I am a codependent people pleaser in rehab, is what I like to say. And I was defending myself against these allegations and accusations that had no basis. I was exhausted, like I'm sure you are feeling. I didn't realize then that I was playing my ex's game. I was falling right into his traps so that he could continue to abuse me and manipulate the situation. And every single time I sent on a message, I didn't recognize that at the time. And God, I can't believe. So I made a decision, right? All right, 30 days, BIFF only. That's what I'm going to try. I'm going to give it a shot because nothing else at this point has worked. No exceptions, right? No matter what he sent me, I implemented BIFF. Now, what is BIFF? BIFF is brief, right? So we're talking short messages, no more long ranty ones. 1, 3 sentences max where possible. Sometimes you might need a few extra sentences, but there's no novels that we're writing anymore. No paragraphs. And that was hard for me. The longer my messages were, and the longer your messages are, the more material you give them to weaponize against you, the more words you're giving them to flip the script, to twist your words, to further manipulate you. Brief means that you do not write an essay. You say what needs to be said and you stop. Full stop, and you move on. So informative, right? This means we're sticking to the facts only. We're talking about schedule, logistics, kids, nothing emotional, nothing personal. We're not talking about the past. We're not rehashing the marriage, the relationship. He cheated. You're with the new lover. None of that. Nothing that could be screenshotted by your ex and later twisted is going to be in your messages. Informative means that you are a business partner. You're not an ex-spouse. You communicate like you are sending a work email to someone who you don't particularly like. We've all been there. We've all been there. So you know what I'm talking about. Now, friendly. This is neutral to like a warm tone, right? It's not cold. It's not sarcastic, which you have to be careful with canned responses because it can be looked at and interpreted that way. You're not performing that you're besties with your ex, okay? You're not faking it. You are simply removing bait that can create further conflict. Friendly does not mean that you're fake. It means that you're not going to give them a single hostile word to use against you. It doesn't mean that you like them. It just means that you're being polite. Firm. We're having clear boundary, non-negotiable types of facts, right? So we're going to maintain our boundaries. And if you have a court order, that is a legal boundary. Stick to it. No JADE. What does JADE mean? What are all these acronyms, Bridget, that you're coming to me with? Well, JADE is justify, argue, defend, or explain. We're not doing any of that anymore. Firm means that you do not explain yourself into a corner. You are going to state the fact and you're going to move on. Right? Let's all move on together. We're not going to do the old style of communication any longer because it didn't get us anywhere. All right, so I want to give you a few examples of BIFF communication messages that I have used in not only my own case, but in my work with hundreds of clients that I've worked with over the years. All right, so here's a schedule change request. Before BIFF, I'm going to read it to you. There was a message and it said something along this line. This was a response from someone not using BIFF. That's not a high conflict parent. So we'll just say, for the purpose of this video, this was my message. Okay? I cannot believe that you are doing this again. Every single time there is a change, you make it impossible. The kids have a life too, and you clearly do not care about that. I need you to respond by tonight or I'm going to file contempt. That is a fully loaded message, right? And what would a high conflict ex do? They're going to use that I'm going to file for contempt as a threat. They're going to twist it. So after BIFF, after 30 days, what did my message then look like? Same situation. Hi, the kids have a birthday party Saturday at 2 p.m. I am requesting a 1-hour schedule adjustment. Please confirm by Thursday. Thanks so much. Do you feel the difference? Do you hear the difference? The first message, which I'm not proud of, okay, gave him exactly what he wanted. He wanted my emotion. He wanted my reaction. He wanted escalation. He wanted material. The second one, I gave him nothing. There is nothing to grab onto. There's nothing to twist. There's nothing to file. You give them nothing. My co-parent coach told me this years ago. Bridget, he gets nothing. And I still live by those words today. All right, second example for you. Responding to a provocation, right? So what do you do when you're being provoked? Well, before BIFF, this was a message that I embarrassingly had sent. That is completely untrue, and you know it. I have never once done what you are accusing me of, and I have the text to prove it. You are manipulating the situation, and the kids can see exactly who you are. I ever wrote something like that. After BIFF, 30 days. Just because you say something doesn't make it true. Regarding the exchange on Friday, I will be there at 5 p.m. per our court order. Thanks. That's it. So the second response took me probably about 4 attempts to write. My first draft, I think, had got like 3 paragraphs. I was defending myself, but I kept asking, right, through this drafting process of the message, does this help my kids? Does this help my case? And I'm like, am I also venting? Am I venting here? Am I defending myself? So I answered those questions, and the answer was it wasn't helping my kids. It was not helping my case, and I was defending myself, right? I deleted the whole entire message. All right, third example, when your ex ignores BIFF and escalates. So quick reality check for you. Not every co-parent de-escalates. Some escalate harder when you stop reacting. When you start using BIFF, they go hard. And it doesn't mean that BIFF is not working. It just means that they are still going through all of their buttons that they know of yours to push to see if you will take the bait and react. They are betting on you being triggered, girl. All right. So week 2, right, he sent me a message that was designed to break me. It was extremely accusatory. I think about it now and it makes me want to cry of what he was accusing me of. And it was, right, completely false. And it did touch on something deeply personal. And I remember I sat there with my phone in my hand for like 20 minutes. And then I sent, this is a response. I hear that you have concerns. Can you please share with me some additional questions that you may have? I'm happy to hear more. And the kids will be ready to be picked up at 5 p.m. at the exchange location, right? So that was it, right? 20 minutes of me regulating my nervous system, 20 minutes of me trying to calm down my anxiety because I was triggered. And I'm going to tell you something, right? That non-response, that is documentation gold, right? I'm not giving him, the non-response doesn't mean that I'm not responding at all, right? I'm not giving him the satisfaction of what he wanted me to say. So the 30-day breakdown, let's talk about what actually happened. So week 1 was the hardest thing. This was the hardest part of this journey. The urge I had to explain myself, it was almost physical. BIFF feels really unnatural at first. You're like, this feels fake. I've worked with clients that are like, why do I have to say hi, John, at the beginning of these messages and thanks, Bridget? Like, that sounds stupid. I don't talk like that. It feels unnatural because you have not been taught how to communicate this way, right? So you'll write the long messages, just don't send them. Draft it, delete it, and then send a BIFF message, right? My ex's tone did not change in a week. He escalated, just as I told you, right? This is very normal. Week 1 nearly broke me, and not because of what he sent, but because of what I had to hold back in myself. This is a lot of reframing, a lot of redoing the way that we've previously communicated. Every instinct of mine had said, defend yourself. BIFF said, Bridget, don't put down the phone. You're not going to defend yourself. All right, so the second week, this is when the shift started inside of me, right? This was the first shift that I felt inside. So my stress started dropping, not because that my ex's behavior was improved or he was changing, because they don't ever change, but because my behavior was changing. I stopped waiting for his reply to know if I had handled something right. I stopped waiting for the reply. I knew that, like, hey, I'm going to handle this. I've got this. And I didn't need validation from him that I had done something right or wrong, right? I noticed in myself that my documentation was clearer and, in fact, more factual. I was able to quickly extract information from my communication and add it to my documentation, right? On March 10th, 2021, this happened. It was just the facts. So somewhere in week 2, I realized something. I had been measuring my success previously by his reaction. You all know that moment when you're sitting there waiting for their response to come in, and you see that maybe they give you a thumbs up, and you're like, that's a win. He's not giving me a whole lot of back and forth. There's no fight here. Who cares, right? Biff taught me to measure myself by my own conduct, my own communication skills versus my ex's. By week 3, the co-parent started to shift, right? His messages got shorter because they start to mirror behavior. They were less inflammatory. They were, still not kind, but I don't feel like they were being used to weaponize the messages against me, right? Like, he was not trying to communicate with me as a way of continuing to hurt me or to get a reaction. High conflict people lose power when they cannot get a reaction out of you, right? It's like if you are on a plane that is going down and it's going to crash, what do all of the flight attendants tell you in safety, right? Put your oxygen mask on yourself first before putting it on a child or someone next to you. This is the same thing. You need to take care of yourself first. If you don't, you are giving them oxygen. That is supply. You give them supply. And we don't want to do that. BIFF helps us remove that reaction and remove the giving them supply. So one exchange that would have maybe turned into a 40 message back and forth tit for tat type of thing, I was able to resolve it in like 3 messages total. And I do not want to overstate this. He did not become a cooperative co-parent overnight. He's still not a cooperative co-parent, right? I have 2 ex-husbands that are high conflicts, right? But there's something that shifted when he realized the chaos loop was broken and I stopped playing the damn game. It was giving him nothing. Now, by week 4, my court documentation for the month was like airtight, right? I was factual. I was not emotional. I was professional. I was so damn proud of myself, like gold star for Bridget. My email inbox went from a source of absolute dread to evidence that I could use in my case. So I felt in control of something that I was unable to control for years. And I felt so hopeless before using BIFF. By day 30, BIFF was not something that I was doing deliberately anymore. It was just like automatic, right? It was now my default way of communicating. And that is when I knew this was a permanent shift in how I operate and show up as a co-parent. What changed after 30 days? So the first result was my high conflict ex's tone changed, right? He escalated in weeks 1 and 2 and then began de-escalating by week 3. There's a lot of data surrounding this. We do see an ongoing de-escalation of the conflict the more you use BIFF. So this is the pattern, right? High conflict people ramp up first when you stop reacting, then they pull back. It is very predictable. Not every co-parent will shift. Not every co-parent will be on the same timeline, but yours can no longer weaponize what you never gave them, right? I'm not saying that BIFF fixes your co-parent. I'm saying that BIFF removes your contributing to the conflict. And that changes the dynamic, whether they like it or not. The second result was my stress dropped significantly. My shorter messages were equated to less time living in the conflict. I was not spending my days and my evenings crafting the perfect defensive response anymore and, anxious all day long, wondering what he was going to respond with next and when I needed to immediately respond. I was able to reclaim mental space and peace for myself that I did not even realize that I had given up. This part, I think, was what surprised me the most because I thought that BIFF would feel like suppressing myself. Instead, it felt like freedom to me. I gave him less and I started to get my life back as a result. The third result was my documentation again got better, right? So BIFF messages are clean and factual, and it's exactly what judges want to see, right? So I was cleaning up my communication over time because I was building my case so that I could file for contempt and modification. His escalating responses next to my, cool, calm, and collected ones, well, that was a contrast that was telling the whole story that needed to be told. My communication became one of the strongest parts of my case. When a judge looks at 6 months of communication records and sees that your messages are professional and that his are not, you don't have to really say a word, right? The evidence will speak for you. Now, what BIFF does not do, because I've got to keep it real for you here, BIFF does not stop a high conflict person from filing false motions or lying in court. BIFF does not replace legal strategy. It is a communication tool. It is not a legal defense. And BIFF does not work overnight. It's not a miracle cure. You're going to expect escalation before the de-escalation comes. BIFF is not silence. It is not the gray rock method. It is not the yellow rock method. Please do not use these methods. I started doing it and it did not help, right? You are still communicating. You're just being strategical. I want to be completely honest with you. BIFF is, not this magic wand. It did not make my co-parent a reasonable person. But what it did do was make me more unbeatable in my communication record. And family court, these things are really important. I was able to solidify my case with my communication. If I could go back to the beginning of my custody journey and give myself one tool, it would be BIFF, right? Not because it is easy, but it's effective. And it turns your communication into evidence, documentation for your case. It removes the power of someone who has spent years using your own words against you. 30 days changed my case, changed my life, and it can change yours too. If this video helped you, if you learned something today that changes how you show up in your next message to your co-parent, do one thing for me. Hit that follow button right now. I continue to share communication strategies, documentation tips, and court prep within this channel for parents that are navigating exactly what you're going through, right? You do not have to figure this out alone. Follow me, and I will see you in the next one. Till then.